welcome to the Mom View. This is Kimberly Fletcher, and today we are going to be talking about the enemy. All these people that we're looking at, thinking that they are the problem, and if we get rid of them, it's the solution. That's not the problem. They're not the enemy, and it will not be the solution. If you do not know who the enemy is, then you will not be able to beat the enemy. So who is it? Well, I'm going to tell you a little bit of history, because it's history that we need to know to be able to know what it is we're actually fighting, because it's more than what you think, it's bigger than what you think, and it's further, deeper, and wider than you could ever possibly imagine. Culture determines elections. Elections do not determine culture. We keep looking at everything as if we have an election and we're going to fix everything. How many votes did you convert? How many people did you get out to the polls? What difference does it make if the people who are going out to the polls or turning in their ballots early or voting in any way, shape, or form hate America? What good does the election process do if we have an electorate that hates America, or that doesn't have any idea what America stands for, what it's about, or why she's worth fighting for? Why is America unique in all the world? What we're facing is something that has historically been proven to destroy countries. And it's been done and many times in other countries and other societies. And the three most heinous despots of our time are proof: Hitler, Stalin, and Mao. What did they do? They went after the children. Education came under heavy control in Nazi Germany. Adolf Hitler believed the youth of Germany could be totally indoctrinated to support the Volk, a nation made up of the most superior of the human races. This mass brainwashing was to be achieved in two ways: the transformation of the school curriculum and the creation of bodies like Hitler Youth. The Reich Ministry of Education, Culture, and Science took control of the education system in 1934, and while it didn't change the structure it inherited, it did major surgery on the staff. Jews were sacked en masse, and by 1938, Jewish children were barred from schools. Teachers with rival political views were sidelined, and women were encouraged to start producing children rather than teach them. Just have the children, hand them over to the state, we'll take it from there. Of those who remained in the education system, anyone who didn't seem dedicated enough to the Nazi cause was retrained in Nazi ideas. This process was aided by the creation of the National Socialist Teachers League, which affiliation was basically required in order to retain a job, as evidenced by a 97% membership rate in 1937. And then grades suffered. Once the teaching staff was organized, so was what they taught. There were two main thrusts of the new teaching. To prepare the population to better fight and breed, physical education was given much more time in schools, and to better prepare children to support the state, Nazi ideology was given to them in the form of an exaggerated German history and literature, outright lies in science, and German language and culture to form the Volk. Hitler's Mein Kampf was heavily studied, and children gave Nazi salutes to their teachers as a show of allegiance. By 1939, membership was compulsory for all children of the right age. The Hitler Youth is one of the most evocative Nazi organizations, visibly and effectively representing a regime that wanted to remake the whole of German society into a brutal, cold, quasi-medieval new world. And it was willing to start by brainwashing children. People say that the children walked into school one day and there were crosses on the wall, and the next day they walked in and there were swastikas. I don't know if that's true literally, but figuratively, it certainly did happen. It was like a light switch went off, and suddenly everybody was doing Hitler salutes, and the children were being encouraged to join the Volk, be part of Hitler Youth. Hilmar von Kemp is a man who wrote a book. He was a former Hitler Youth, and he talks about how Hitler created this idea of the Volk through the Hitler Youth. One of the things Hilmar said was that the children were encouraged to tell on the parents, report on the parents if they weren't being good little Nazis, if they were doing one little thing wrong or this little thing wrong. Report on your parents, be a part of the Volk. And they always had the fun activities on Sunday. Why would they do that? To pull children away from the church, of course. So they're pulling them away from the family, they're pulling them away from the church, and the state is taking over. There's a quote by Adolf Hitler that's been repeated many times in the last several years. He alone who owns the youth gains the future. And you get attacked if you use that quote. Why? It's not because Hitler said it. It's because it's true. And if you don't want people to know the truth, then you have to hide it behind lies. If you don't want people to know history, you have to keep it from them. So let's move on to Stalin, another man who knew the power of starting with the youth. Education is a weapon whose effects depend on who holds it in his hands and at whom it is aimed. So there is a powerful thing called a story. And when you change the story, you change the hearts and minds of the people. Well, the story has been changed, and that is a communist goal. We'll discuss those communist goals in another episode, but today I just want to focus on the one about the children. The goal was to take control of the education system. Why? Because then you can have the hearts and minds of the children and mold them into whatever you want the future to be. Well, Stalin changed the story. Ezra Benson, who was the agriculture secretary underneath President Eisenhower, was able to come face to face with the true objective of the communist agenda.
It may surprise you to learn that I was host to Mr. Khrushchev for a half day when he visited the United States as a state visitor. But according to President Eisenhower, Khrushchev had expressed a desire to learn something of American agriculture. And after seeing Russian agriculture, I can understand why. As we talked face to face, he indicated that my grandchildren would live under communism. After assuring him that I expected to do all in my power to assure that his and all other grandchildren will live under freedom, he arrogantly declared in substance, "You Americans are so gullible. No, you won't accept communism outright. But we'll keep feeding you small doses of socialism until you finally wake up and find you already have communism. We won't have to fight you. We'll so weaken your economy until you fall like overripe fruit into our hands."
Harold Goddard said the destiny of the world is determined less by the battles that are won and lost than by the stories that it loves and believes in. Our story has changed. Everything that we believed in, American values of hard work, equal justice, equal opportunity, all of those things have been turned into socialism is good, communism is great, and we have been losing battles because we have been fighting principle with policy. And we need to fight principle with principle because when we do, freedom wins. I'll give you a perfect example. One of my daughters came home one day and was talking about how wonderful socialism was and all the great attributes of socialism and why we need socialism and how everybody's cared for. And I said, okay, well, do you want to play a game? She loves playing games. And she's like, what do you mean? And I said, well, you're going to have a, solid discussion and play a game, see if socialism wins. Okay, she said. I said, okay, hand me your phone. She looks at me and I'm like, said you wanted to play. So she hesitantly hands me her phone. And I said, okay, from now on, I'm going to tell you when you can use your phone, what kind of phone you're going to have, the apps that you can have on your phone, how many apps, what kind of apps, when you're going to use those apps, how many contacts that you can contact each day. I didn't even get halfway through my list when she grabbed her phone and said, give me my phone back, socialism sucks. Boom, there you go. There's the lesson. Freedom courses through our veins. If we can help our children, our neighbors understand what freedom means, what socialism means in comparison, they will choose freedom. We can't just keep fighting the principles of socialism and communism by throwing more policies at it like putting a Band-Aid on a seeping sore. We have to go to the center of the wound. We have to bring the stories back. In the early 1970s, a man by the name of Gary Allen wrote a book because he was tired of hearing all of these people talking about the communists were coming. The communists are coming, the communists are coming. And he said, that's it. I am going to go on a research project to prove these kooks wrong. And after 9 months of exhaustive, extensive research, he proved the kooks right. And he wrote a book called None Dare Call It Conspiracy. One of the things he says in the beginning of the book is the objective of every conspiracy is to convince everyone else that there is no conspiracy. We are in the midst of the tail end of a 100, 200-year conspiracy that started even long before that. The war is for the future of America. While Hitler and Stalin were definitely horrible, heinous dictators, the worst of the three is Mao. What did Mao do? He was pretty brilliant. Mao was in the middle of the whole revolution in China, getting rid of the emperor and moving in this new regime that was going to make everything fair. It was a body of men who led the country. Well, for those decades that they were running the country, Mao started to become a little bit out of control, the other leaders thought, and so they were working to remove him. Mao didn't like that at all. So he came up with a new plan. Reader's Digest version is, he closed the schools, he wrote a book, the Red Book, and he had it passed out to all the children in clubs and groups that they put together, kind of like Hitler did with the Hitler Youth. And these children would come together and become the party. They became the Red Guard. When you think of the Red Guard, you think of men who are wearing these uniforms and carrying big guns. No, they were children, as young as 5, 6, 7 years old, fully armed and carrying their Red Book. So then the children were encouraged to destroy everything old. It's time for the new order, the new world order. Everything old needs to go. And so the children were on a rampage. And they started tearing down statues, defacing monuments, burning old records. Mao's wife was put in charge of purging the country of everything that had any kind of Western influence at all. And then those men that were the original revolutionary fighters in China were paraded through the streets with signs on them that said traitor, as the children hit them with sticks because they weren't communist enough. They were communist traitors. Well, as the children went on a rampage over the course of years, eventually Mao gained complete control of the country. And of course, order had to be restored. And millions of the Chinese people were murdered. Order was restored. Well, decades later, the grandchildren of those children that fought against the old were the ones who stood in Tiananmen Square to fight to get back what they had lost and what they had originally hoped for. That is where we're heading. That is what they do. Who are they? They're not the school board members. They're not the Biden administration. They're not any of those people that we're looking at saying they're the enemy and we need to remove them. They are part of the problem, of course, and they are symptoms of the corruption, absolutely. But there is one author, and that is the devil himself. We have two armies raging right now. The only decision is whose camp are we in? Are we in God's army or are we in the devil's? And if money and power is all you care about, then you've chosen your camp. But if the future of our country, if freedom itself is something that you care about, the safety and protection of your children, whether or not your children will ever have the freedoms that we have, if those are the things you care about, then choose your camp. Because God is the God of freedom. And the devil, his religion is communism. There is no God in communism. There is no religion or faith. There's no freedom. There's no individual liberties or individual property. There's no family. None of that exists. It is a cold, sad, desperate way to live. It is how the devil likes it. He doesn't like beauty. He doesn't like peace. He needs chaos to be able to have ultimate power. However, spoiler alert, God wins in the end. This is not a battle for outcome. This is a battle for casualties. And we need to decide, are we going to allow our children, our grandchildren, those we love within our sphere of influence to be casualties in that war? Are we going to be a casualty in that war? This is the battle that we're facing right now, the raging war around us. There will be little battles and skirmishes here and there, but the war is for the future of America, the souls ourselves. And when you look outside, from the outside in, at everything that's going on, whether it's environmentalism or what's happening in the schools or the destruction, the dismantling of the Constitution, what's happening in Israel and Ukraine, you look at all of these things from the outside in, and you can see there is one major objective: kill God and enslave the people. God cannot be killed. That is a deception, a lie. But if you can pretend that you can dismiss him, make him a figment of our imagination, just some cute little children's story, then you can continue to live with the way the world is going. If you believe in God, then you believe in a future state of rewards and punishments. You believe in being decent so that on the other side, you have a good life. If you believe that America is worth saving, then we have to be the ones who are going to start with our own hearts. And instead of isolating people, let's start connecting, creating relationships, and being the kind of person that you want the other people to be.